Well, hello everyone. This is Dr. Eileen, and this is Medicine Walk. And for those of you who are listening in on Blog Talk Radio, this is Healing House Radio. Now, first, for those of you who are my fellow mothers, happy Mother's Day. I hope that it was a very good one for you. And second, what I'm going to talk about today has to do with a an experience that kind of happened over a couple of days with my cat Luna, who you met in the last video. Apparently, Luna was outside and a couple of dogs frightened her, and so she ran up a tree. And, well, she couldn't get herself down. And by the time I came home from work, she was well entrenched up in the tree and apparently was just not able to figure out how to get down. So, I tried coaxing with food, and I thought, well, I'll just leave her, and, she'll probably figure out a way to get herself down. But the next morning, she had not. And so it was really, very upsetting to have her out there and up in a tree and meowing. And anybody who owns a cat knows that feeling of hearing your cat meow from a tree. So, very long story short, I was able to contact a wonderful young man named Brian, he works with trees. And so he was able to go up, and it was really cool because he showed this huge respect for the tree itself. And he talked to Luna, and you have to have really good energy when a cat that doesn't know you and you're climbing towards it in a tree. And I was really surprised because Luna, she didn't draw back. In fact, she kind of leaned her paw out and as if she was reaching out to him. And when he got up to where she was at, and she was a good 25, 30 feet up, he got her and put her into a sort of a bag type of thing and then lowered her down, and I was able to get her, so Luna is safe and sound, and she's over there somewhere. And it occurred to me that a very powerful lesson that would be very good to settle into is the idea that we're not always aware of what we're getting ourselves into when we're getting ourselves into it. And that's what I want to talk about today. There's two parts to it. First, the idea of how often we get ourselves into things thinking we know what we're doing, thinking we've got a clear idea on what we want to do, but the thing is we're reacting. We are responding to a stimulus, and what happens then is that often that response is something that can kind of get us into trouble because we're not really thinking that clearly. We're thinking in the moment. We're thinking about, yeah, the immediate cause and effect piece to it. If I do this, I will remove myself from my problem. Just like Luna. In that moment, it's like, okay, if I run up that tree, those dogs can't reach me. And unfortunately, there wasn't a plan B. And how often do we end up setting up ourselves for a situation where we don't have a plan B? We've reached a certain point, and then, well, then what? And I was thinking how often in my life I've reacted to something, and it could be an action, it could be something you say. Yeah, how many of us have made a statement that we really wish we could take the next 30 seconds of our lives back? But, we say something or we do something, and in hindsight, we wish we hadn't. In hindsight, we knew we were reacting to something immediate. And it's very eye-opening to actually see a process that on one hand is so very familiar, and on the other hand I really hadn't noticed how powerful it is, how important it is to take that moment to just stop and not get so wrapped up in, okay, I need immediately to get out, or I need immediately to do something. And then you end up regretting it, and you end up thinking, oh, wow, I've kind of gotten myself into trouble. And, when we get ourselves into trouble, that's where we start trying to It's like, okay, well, let me try this, see if that works. Oh, well, let me try that, see if that works. Let me try this. And we end up jumping from one thing to another when what we need to do is just stop and say, okay, what is my situation here? What is my situation right now? And what is it that I'm thinking that I want to be able to accomplish? And how can I accomplish that? How can I get that idea across? How can I get the process moving into a direction that I would like to be able to get it into, as something that'll get me out of trouble or that will restore balance within me. But often it's the impulse. It's the this is what I want now, this is what I need now. And that can lead us down some pretty difficult places, because once you start just going on impulse, then it's all about just managing the moment. And yes, often people say you should be in the moment. Well, yeah, you can be in the moment, unless it is unless there's something that in the moment is not doing so well, something in the moment that is not helping. And if you can figure out that the moment is not what it should be or what it needs to be, then you want to change it. But consider how you change it. Consider how you shift where you are and where you want to be. Consider what are the long term consequences, because everything has consequences. For Luna, it was running up a tree and having to spend the night in the cold in a tree. Where my consequence was having to take time off work, and the $100 that it cost me to have it done, which was worth every single penny, because it was more important to me that Luna be safe. And so when I consider that, okay, Luna, the cat with a brain the size of a walnut, created a consequence that led to me having to make some decisions, but I wanted to be able to make them. And okay, if I work in the morning, then go and contact the tree person and arrange for them, and then I can go back in the late afternoon, early evening, treat some more people, and then so there had to be organization. And when you're figuring something out, when you have a situation where maybe there's something that you did not foresee, because I know Luna did not foresee, two strange dogs being in the area. So it means that we have to be able to figure, okay, if something unusual happens, what do I do? How do I manage it? What's the best way for me to be able to make the most of this situation and maybe even learn something from it? Maybe turn it into a positive. And it's really not as hard as most people think, but it does require you to stop. It does require you to consider and take a moment and ponder what it is that you want to achieve. What is, for her it was getting away from the dogs. It's like, okay, well, you got away from the dogs, but now you're stuck up a tree. So consider, take time, pause, think, decide, and choose what it is that you're going to do based on a pretty good idea of, okay, I've taken the possible consequences and ramifications of my choice into account. Now, there's another part to it. There's the part where we are up a tree or something difficult has happened. That's when we count on our friends. That's when we count on our support system. That's when we call in support. And Luna, even with a brain the size of a walnut, she was able to figure out, I need help. So she was up there doing what a cat does when it's not in its happy place. She was meowing. And she got the attention of everybody, not only myself, but everybody in the nearby cabins. So, in her own way, she was calling for help. She was asking for support. And just amazingly enough, when that support came, because she could have done what most cats do if a stranger is approaching them, or if they're feeling vulnerable, she could have just tried to move higher up into the tree, which would have been a big problem. But what she did was, apparently, she realized that this person was here to help her. She realized that she couldn't get out of that problem. And maybe showing a little bit more sense than what one would normally attribute to a cat, she decided to accept help. And that's something that we really struggle with sometimes. How to accept help. And who to accept help from. And it's important that you can be able to figure out who are the people. And the best time to figure this out is before you're in a crisis. Because when you're in a crisis, you should already have, I've talked about the support team. You should already have an idea on who you need to call to help you out of it. And it's very easy to decide who it is that you think, okay, if I'm in this particular type of a jam, here's the person who I'm going to call on because I know I can depend on them. I know that they will help me. Plus, make sure it's someone who you are willing to allow yourself to be vulnerable enough to be helped by. Someone who, as this man was getting Luna and lifting her up and putting her into a bag, I mean, she stiffened up a little bit because there is that trust. Here she was in a hazardous situation, and her stability was her holding on with her claws to the branch she was on, and suddenly she was being expected to let that go. And it's important to know when to let go, when to trust that our friends have us, when to trust that the people who we love and who love us are going to be there. And even if it means letting go of what we think is stable, maybe what we're holding on to is a part of the problem. And if we can trust someone in our life, or a group of people, preferably more than one, but if you can trust people in your life to be able to say, okay, let go, I've got you. It's all right. Let go of it, and I've got you. Or trust people who will say, hey, something's going on, or you're acting a little odd, or when you're being really moody and they call you on it. Hey, what's going on? How come you're biting everybody's head off? So being able to trust enough to make it easy for our friends and our support system to help us. That's one of the biggest things to being able to get out of a problem, is to let the people who know how to help you help you. Because if you don't let them help you, all you're doing is creating more problems. And you're also really irritating the people who are trying to get you through the situation. And it doesn't matter what the situation is. If it's more than you can handle by yourself, you need to be able to let it go. You need to be able to say, I can't handle this. And that's a huge step. It's a very huge step. And anybody who's ever done it, and at some point I think we've all done it, had to admit that we didn't have control of the situation, and had to admit we were in over our head. And it's very frightening to do that, because then you're vulnerable. And what if the person makes fun of you? What if they berate you? What if they just shame you? But the thing is that's why you choose the people that you choose. That's why you pick the people that you trust. That, yeah, I mean, they may tell you about yourself later, but in the moment, in the crisis, no. All they're focused on is, okay, we've got something we need to do, and we've got something we need to resolve, and we're going to resolve it. So, accept help. Reach out for it. If a cat with a brain the size of a walnut can know to reach out its little paw and to hold still and to let someone help her out of a tree, I think that the rest of us can figure out a way to do it. I think we can all figure out a way to just set aside what it is that we are holding on to, which for the most part is just ego. Because nobody likes to think that we don't have it under control. I'm sure even Luna thought that she had it under control. And it's like, oh, yep, I'm just going to run up this tree and then I'm going to come right down again. And then it's like, oh, I can't get down. And then she started calling for help. And sometimes people call for help in different ways. Sometimes it's not so obvious. I mean, it would help if they just made it obvious and just asked for help. But sometimes people will become cranky when they're asking for help. Sometimes people will get very quiet when they're asking for help. Sometimes people will completely withdraw when they're asking for help. So it means being able to know someone well enough that you can say, hey, this person isn't acting in their normal way. This person isn't responding in the way that I expect or know them to. Maybe they're asking for help. And even though you don't know what it is that they need in that moment, mostly what they need is to feel safe. Mostly what they need is someone to say, hey, it's going to be okay. We can do this. We'll get it taken care of, and we'll do it together. And it's amazing how quickly problems can be resolved. I mean, from the point that the guy started going up the tree to the point that he was lowering Luna down, maybe 15 minutes. I mean, he was good. He knew how to get up there and do his thing. And he also did it carefully. Because the thing is that it's good to be able to depend on someone who isn't going to be as stuck as you are. This person knew exactly what he needed to do. He looked at the situation. He assessed what he needed and where he could step and where he could move. He had his